the running plays, the lack of calling running plays, the wide receiver screens with, small wide receivers out there trying to block. It doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. And we're going to get into all of that. We're absolutely going to get into all of that. We'll get to that a little bit later on, because I want to go around the whole NFL, because it is madness in the NFL. Okay, we got a great name of the show. We talk about the NFL because it's madness week in and week out. You hear these scores, you look at these scores, and you just are amazed at what's happening. You're absolutely amazed at what's happening when you see Houston, who you expect to win, even though Jacksonville's a little bit better, get manhandled. When you see the Falcons struggling with the Bears having a chance to tie late in the game, with the Steelers struggling with the Browns. I thought the Minnesota-New Orleans game was going to be a little bit more of a contest, but Sam Bradford looking like Joe Montana. Alex Smith and the Chiefs going in to Foxborough and winning a game. So it will be called the madness. Each week I'm hoping to bring somebody on from the national standpoint to talk about things. And this week we bring in from Sharp Football, Warren Sharp. Okay, he will join the program somewhere around 8:30, maybe a little after 8:30, to kind of get us through breaking down week one and prepare us for what to look for in week two. So a lot of good stuff on the horizon, a lot of stuff for us to talk about today. I want to hear from you, 516-531-9817. Call in. Let's chat about what you want to talk about from the NFL and go from there. But, the show is only as good as you guys make it. The listeners are there. We need participation. And next week, I'm going to make a challenge. I'm going to put out a request. We're not going to talk about it this week. I'm going to do it next week, as far as callers, followers, and really trying to build the dynamic of this show. So, but first, before we get into the NFL and the teams on the field, we're going to go with our Outside the Box segment, and we're going to do a little bit of the guys that are involved in our Sundays and Mondays, even if they are not playing. So let's cue up the Joker.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
And with that, we'll go to our Outside the Box segment here. On Monday night, there were two games. You had your normal crew with do the Minnesota-New Orleans game, and then there was a late game out in Denver, the field goal. And in the booth, Rex Ryan made his debut. Now, the one thing that was positive was the first woman, and I can't remember if it's in history or in a very, very, very long time, to broadcast an NFL game, do the play-by-play. And although her name is escaping me right now, I thought that she did. She was good. I thought that she was good. I think that is great that we're going that direction. I will admit that I am, and it's going to sound bad, but I'm a little hesitant on some women announcers doing NFL games, but I thought that she did okay. The problem wasn't her. First of all, Rex Ryan was horrific. And in my opinion, and we could talk about this a little bit too, I thought a lot of the newer guys were bad. Rondé Barber did the Eagles game. I did not think he was very good. I know people were ecstatic about Tony Romo and how good he was, how great of a job he was doing. I did not hear that game as they were playing the same time as the Eagles, but, I heard about a 5-minute clip that someone posted online. And I understand where people think, oh, wow, man, he's a natural. He does have a good voice for it. Forgive me, though. I have a major issue with the color commentator sitting there just trying to call out what play is going to be run. That's not your job, and that's going to get annoying. That's great that you could do that, but I expect you to be able to do that because Well, let's face it, that's what you've done for your last 14 years is you've been playing in the league. So I'm not that impressed that you could do that. And to me, that's going to get annoying really, really quick. I don't think that's a good color commentator to say, hey, Jim, I bet you $5 this is going to be a run. That's not being the color. I want to know your analysis. And when Jim said, hey, how'd you know that? What'd you see? Well, it's 14 years in the league, Jim. Don't give me that crap. I hate that. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Do not come to me with that crap. So I was very unimpressed with the guys in the booth, the new guys that was in the booth. Now, ESPN, okay, from ESPN Deportes, fine, that's okay. But when you're ESPN, shouldn't you make sure a guy is prepared for that type of a spotlight? Because I don't blame the guy for this. I don't blame him. He was put in a very difficult situation. And here's how it sounded.
Here's Sergio Dip.
Beth, Coach, it's a pleasure to be with you guys here on the field from up close, just watching Coach Vance Joseph from here. You watch him now on the screen. This diversity in his background is helping him a lot tonight. Quarterback at Colorado, defensive back in the NFL. And here he is, having the time of his life this night, making his head coaching debut.
I would like to stay quiet for the next hour and just think about what we listened to, but that wouldn't make for really good radio. What the hell was that? And maybe I'm talking from the standpoint of someone who has always held a little animosity towards sideline reporters or former athletes and coaches that get in the booth before people that actually go to school for this and really want to make this a career. But are you freaking kidding me? That's what ESPN does for their sideline reporter for week 1 Monday night? And once again, I'm not trying to take shots at this guy. And obviously, there's a language barrier there, and I know that it has come out that he struggles with it. Absolutely. But ESPN's got to be better than that. You can't put that guy on the sideline. You want to do something like this, do it on a college game where you're not going to have so many people tuned in. That was absurd. That was absurd. It was embarrassing, not only to their network, but for that guy, for Sergio Dip, I think is what they said his name was. It's not right to put him in that situation. Why they felt the need to do that right then, right there, and not at least have a run-through to make sure this guy can handle it? Have a damn script for him or something. Get to watch Van Joseph from here. You see from the screen. Come on, man. Come on. You guys used to do the Come On, Man segment. Come on, man. How the hell are you going to do that to a guy? Terrible. Disgraceful. Utterly disgusting. And I want to know what made them say, listen, they have continued at the worldwide leader in sports to just make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. You get rid of some of the best writers in sports, but you hire guys like Rex Ryan and put them in a booth. I can't even watch the Countdown show anymore. I can't listen to Charles Woodson try and analyze a game. I can't listen to Randy Moss try and be the loud guy just like Deion Sanders is over on the NFL Network. It's bad. It's bad. And when you're ESPN, you should hold yourself to a much higher standard than what they are holding themselves to right now. Because right now, it's disgusting. So, I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are on it, but I think it was an utter disgrace. You want to call it about that or anything else related to the NFL world, 516-531-9817. You can tweet us at TSJ Madness. I will answer tweets. I will read the best, tweets that we get throughout the show. And we can talk on there. And the YouTube link is up. If you go to YouTube, you search TSJ Sports, subscribe. There is a link that you could listen to us on YouTube. It is Wednesday, September 13th, so you would click on the Wednesday, September 13th show. I am logging in there myself as we speak so that I can chat with you right through there as there is a chat room. So a lot of different ways to join the conversation, especially if you don't feel like calling in. You're not ready for that. You're not ready to be on air in that sense. So one other thing I want to talk about before we get to the sports world or before we get to the NFL world, and that is the Cleveland Indians. Today, the Cleveland Indians set the all-time record for most consecutive wins in the American League at 21. They are only trailing the, I think they said the New York Giants maybe, and not, who had 26, obviously a long time ago, as there is no more New York Giants team. When you can do anything 21 times in a row, that's damn impressive. And it absolutely, we should be talking about this as one of the more impressive team feats in baseball, 21 games in a row. And, I heard someone mentioning it today, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've paid attention to every game, but they're not doing this just winning, by one run here. I mean, they've had a couple wins where they have just blown the doors off of opponents. They've blown the doors off of them. So it's something that they should be proud of, that we should have accolades. But what I love is how now they're the World Series favorite in some teams' eyes. It doesn't mean anything when the playoffs roll around. And we should know that because remember when the Oakland A's did it, excuse me, back in the day when they won 20 in a row, it did not mean World Series for them. Just like when, on a little bit different scale, when the Phillies won 111 games, 110 games, 106, whatever it was in 2011, and they lose the first round of the playoffs. None of that matters. None of that matters. So you got to ask yourselves, shouldn't we pump the brakes just a little bit? Okay. Great feat. Talk about it. Let's see how far it goes. Can they get to 26? I mean, listen, it's incredible that they've won 21 in a row. And any sport, that's incredible. So I wanted to at least mention that. I didn't want to be the guy butter. It's not the sport that I go to. It's not the sport that I watch a lot. Have I started to at least pay attention to news stories for the Phillies? Yes, I have not gone to watching them, but I have started to pay attention to news stories. Interesting how the young guys have been playing such a big role and doing a lot of really good things, huh? Maybe they should have brought them up a little bit earlier and they could have at least saved some of their fan support from people who just did not feel the need to watch them. But I am glad to see it. It is a positive. It is something to hang your hat on for the future. In my opinion, this says that the Phillies should probably spend some money this upcoming year, all right, and start building around these guys. Let's not play this game. Just my opinion. But enough of all that talk. It's time to get back to the NFL. It's time to talk about our Eagles. And to talk about our Eagles, we are going across the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to bring in our good friend, head of Philadelphia Sports Network, which is doing one hell of a job. Make sure you're heading over that website. Right now, Liam Jenkins joins us. Liam, thanks so much for hopping on.
No worries, man. It's a pleasure. Great to be back.
Well, we're so glad to have you. We, it was like we waited, and bam, week one's gone, and we're, closing in on week two. But any road win's a good win, especially in the division. And just curious to start this off with your thoughts about the game on Sunday.
Overall, I mean, you've got to be impressed. From start to finish, the Eagles played hard. The offense, for one, looked multi-dimensional, which you didn't last year. I mean, the very first play of the game, you saw a deep target to Torrey Smith. And even though that didn't come to fruition, the willingness to go downfield is almost like a warning sign to the Washington Redskins that the Eagles aren't playing around this year. They've got it figured out, and this is what things are going to do. Now, the offensive line and the run game's a separate debate, and I'm sure we'll get to that one anyway. But on the defensive side of things, to know that they're generating such a strong pass rush that they lose their top cornerback, who they just signed a few weeks ago, leaving them with just Jalen Mills and only two other cornerbacks even active on the day, let alone on the roster. So just two guys in Patrick Robinson over there having to move outside, and that was it. He was the only other guy, so they had to flex in Jalen Watkins, Malcolm Jenkins. To be that confident in a cornerback corps that then lacks your main starter, generate the pass rush, get to the quarterback, make the big plays. I mean, that Jalen Mills interception, for as amazing as it was a play by the Green Goblin, would have been nothing without that all-out kitchen sink at the wall pressure from Jim Schwartz. So overall, defensively, the Eagles were sound and definitely sending a warning to the rest of the league. I think it's really now going to be a case of, can this offensive line gel and really start opening the run game? There were, for me, a couple of times where watching the film, LeGarrette Blount, just there was a lane that was wide open and just he looked to kind of try and bounce inside and then had to rebound into the lane, which then had closed by that point. And they just, again, it seemed like shades of last year where Ryan Matthews was the back getting the lion's share of carries, and still the same result was happening. So the run game for me has got to improve. But overall, like you said, you can't be disappointed. A 5-game losing streak against the Redskins has been bucked, and Doug Peterson starts off 1-0 in the division. You can't ask for much better.
We're talking with Liam Jenkins from Philadelphia Sports Network. Liam, one of the things that's been happening in the city this week is a lot of people have been talking about the negatives of the game, and people are getting mad at them. But it's my opinion, if there are negatives, and the one we're going to talk about is what you just alluded to in the run game, you need to talk about them a little bit. And here's the way I look at the run game, and then I want to get your thoughts. I look at LeGarrette Blount as a volume runner. He's a guy that needs carries, and 14 in a game is not enough for him to get started. And you would see where he'd have a 9-yard run, and then they pull him out of the game, or he'd have a 6-yard run, and they pull him out of the game. I have an issue with that, but then I also have an issue, even when the run game is not going well, you still have to go to it. And when you have 40-plus passes and you're only in the teens in rush attempts, that's a problem. And I think that has to be part of the solution going forward. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and it's something I think with Blount where we've seen it in New England, we've seen it in his days even before then. For me, he works his best when there's a big body in front paving that way for him. And he just doesn't have that with the Eagles yet. The fullback's a position they haven't got figured out. And the volume run works when you're able to run and kind of wear down the defensive line in front and bring down those linebackers. And you saw a couple of times where they were almost scared to go in for the tackle, and they just let him get that extra cushion of 2 or 3 yards because they really do not want to go head on with LeGarrette Blount, which is perfectly understandable. But for me, I think that to get that volume to begin with, the production needs to be there. And the holes are closing so quick that by the time Blount hits the hole, there's nowhere to go. And even a Marshawn Lynch-type brute force isn't going to push through it. And that's where we're seeing Wendell Smallwood come in. That's where we're seeing Darren Sproles come into the game. And while they only got 4 carries each, it did enough to open it. The problem is that, as you said, it's not balanced at all. It's, you've got Carson Wentz throwing 39 times. You've got LeGarrette Blount rushing way less than half of that. And again, it's like I said before, the team are rushing like they were attacking last year, and there just seems to be no sense of direction. And for me, it's I would say either call up Corey Clement. We've seen Clement now on special teams, made a big first play. Let him and Smallwood take a bulk of carries, see how they go. If they can change things, can they add in some counter and some zonal runs, or do they have to dart up the middle? If they do, then is Clement going to be more efficient as he was in preseason than LeGarrette Blount? And if not, let's get Pumphrey and Sproles back there. Now, I heard from a source, it's annoying, so I just wrote an article earlier today on how Donnell Pumphrey may be the X factor against the Chiefs. Heard from a source he may not be active all that much this year at all. So whether or not that's going to play into account is going to be interesting to see. But having Pumphrey and Sproles back there was meant to be a big part of this offense. And if you're going to lose that, you're forcing yourself into a window where after this year especially, you're losing Blunt and Sproles. So there's got to be a clear sense of direction, because otherwise it's another off-season with yet more questions at running back.
Yeah, I was totally on board with them keeping the 5 running backs. I understood it. But now it almost looks like they don't know what to do with it, because you didn't give Smallwood enough carries to even let him get started. Nobody got enough carries because you only ran the ball 14, 15 times in the game. And Corey Clement never even saw he didn't get a carry on offense. I'm not sure if he saw the field on offense, to be very honest with you. I don't remember seeing him out there. So it's definitely something they got to fix. And I do agree with you that the offensive line has got to come together. And I know losing Jason Peters for most of the game might have hurt that, but you got to be able, that backup's got to be able to step right in. So I totally agree with you on that. I want to talk about the esteemed head coach and the play calling, though. And listen, I don't want to act like I am coming down on the guy and I'm saying he cannot do it, but I was really interested to see what kind of adjustments he made as far as some of the play calling. And there are a few things that stick out in my head. One, it was a 3rd and 1 after you gain 9 yards running the ball under center, and he goes into a shotgun with LeGarrette Blount. 2, it was what I'm calling the Aguilar Arena football set, where he sends him in this wide motion, and I know the one pass wasn't supposed to be backwards, but he threw it the one time. The other time, it was a fake and a screen back to Sproles, which everyone in the stadium knew, and the other time it was a running play. Tell me that it's acceptable to say that it's still a concern that Doug Peterson is making some of these calls from the offensive side of the ball.
It's interesting, because I think at the time, if it backfires, everyone's obviously very concerned. And because this narrative has been pushed since mid-season last year, it's at the forefront of everyone's minds. And then you've got this added pressure of apparently Jim Schwartz is trying to take a job, which is, as he admitted, is complete, it's false. There's just a lot of pressure on Peterson alone. But the Aguilar pass is interesting because it's one of my favourite plays that the Eagles have, albeit like a variation. And the run pass option in itself is going to give Carson Wentz so much in the way of opportunities moving forward. We saw it with Dane Evans in preseason, how dominant it can be. When you have Wentz, Alshon Jeffrey, we saw Aguilar into motion like a jet sweep type thing on a screen. The amount of space that Aguilar had he got that ball, it would have been a first down, no doubt at all. The other ones, there are a couple calls where I know they went for a 2-point conversion instead of a field goal because of Sturgis. There are times where you look at the play and you look at, it's 3rd and 1, you're trying to run the clock and they call a pass. They're trying to get into field goal range and they end up going backwards. And there are times, it's like last year, where it'll be 3rd and 7 and they run a 5-yard play. Having said that, the idea is I think they're just trying to give Wentz a lot more optionality. And if you've got a quarterback that is comfortable making audibles at the line of scrimmage, can take advantage of a run-pass option, and can really move this offense around as he pleases, then it takes a lot of that strain off of the play calling. The problem with it is that Doug Peterson's setting that tone in that personnel group to begin with. And if he's going to get schooled, it's against the man who's kind of made him into the coach he is. So we're going to learn very quickly, I think, this weekend, just how either refined or how concerned we should be with Peterson in terms of those play calls.
And I guess to my point is, like, the third time they ran that same set where you have Aguilar, and I can't imagine he's supposed to go that deep in motion, because it legitimately looked like I was watching an Arena Football League game when they do that big motion around the quarterback. But the third time he ran it, I knew it sitting in. I said it's going to be a fake one way and come back, because they never, there was no element of surprise. It just looked like, okay, here's the script. First, we're going to throw it to him. Second, we're going to run. Third, we're going to go back to Sproles. And to me, I can't stand the amount of wide receiver screens. We hated that when Chip Kelly was here, and I'm going to continue to hate it with Doug Peterson here. And I like I said, I don't want to harp on the negative because it was a nice win, but it's still concerning that some of these situations, I don't know if he's outmatched. And you said it. We're going to find out, and Doug's going to find out really quickly, when his mentor is on the other sideline in a couple of days.
Yeah, I think there is a slight cause for concern among, especially fan-wise at least. I mean, personnel-wise, they're very much, I think, rallied behind their coach because they have to be. It's the winning formula. The pieces are in place. It's just trying to string it together. And at the same time, he's only a second-year head coach, and while he's learned everything from Andy Reid, the big Andy Reid criticism from his time in Philadelphia was he never ran the ball. You know, he had LaShawn McCoy and still struggled to run the ball. You know, you've got a dynamic quarterback, still struggles. And it's that same thing, I think, with Doug Peterson that we're seeing now. A lot of it is that you've got a West Coast offense that is very much check down or touchdown mentality. And teams caught on very, very early last year that the Eagles became one-dimensional when they can't run the ball. And that one dimension, when you can't create separation, isn't good. So Peterson didn't have the tools to create these big, extravagant plays down the middle. Now you've got Zach Ertz coming on a post over the top, splitting linebackers and safeties, making huge plays. He led the team in receiving. You know, I mean, if over the last 16 games, he's had a 1,000-yard season. If he can do it all in 1 year, he's away. But just the amount of weapons they've got opens things up. So what may look like very boring, very stagnating play calls, elsewhere on the field, you've got a receiver burning Josh Norman. You've got Alshon Jeffrey on a curl route, ending up flinging Norman so far back down the field, he hits the back of the end zone. And the thing is, the windows for opportunity are there. I think it's just time for Peterson to look back at the tape each week and progress. And that's the thing. It's progress. It's a 5-year window. You're entering year 2 where Wentz has come on leaps and bounds. And if we've still got these same concerns and they've been made more legitimate in a few weeks' time, then the big questions are going to be raised because this team is too good to have concerns about play calling, and whether they're justified or not, the concerns are there, and you can't be having that with a team that is looking very much that it's heading towards the championship run within the next few years.
Well, we'll talk with Liam Jenkins, Philadelphia Sports Network. Liam, you know, one guy that just impressed me, I know that there's been criticism about his deep passes and the accuracy needs to be there, but let's talk about Carson Wentz and the intangibles and the little bit of magic he showed with extending the plays. I mean, honestly, you know, that's, to me, the main reason that they were able to do just enough offensively to win this game. Just talk about, in game 1, the maturity we've already seen from Carson Wentz from 1 year to the next.
It's incredible, and I think that having a full season, and even a full off-season named as a starter, comes so valuable. It's so easy to forget that last season, Wentz was QB3 until about 7 days before the season opener against Cleveland. You know, it's QB3, just be shunned up to starter. Chase Daniel's like, dude, that's my spot. What are you doing? You've got the receivers kind of not sure. And then he's got to come into that role, learn the offense very quickly, build up that chemistry with the other guys. It's largely why Trey Burton and Paul Turner were able to have such big numbers in the snaps they did play. Then you look at what he's doing this year and then taking the receivers out to Fargo, seeking out a quarterback coach. And, I mean, for me, it's the signs were clear as seen as preseason game 1. His footwork in the pocket, he's got a much more firm base now when he's standing. He's lighter on his feet. He's not planting his back foot when he throws. The motion's a lot sleeker. And he's not sticking to his reads anymore. He's not kind of locking down his receivers, staring them down and giving them that window that we saw so poignantly against Seattle. He's a much more refined quarterback. And the pocket presence, being able to sense that pressure, we saw it towards the back end of last season. I think he quadrupled the amount of rushing yards he had in the back end of last year compared to the front. This season now, I mean, not even so much as a rushing quarterback, but maneuvering that pocket, dancing around, alleviating pressure. There's very few quarterbacks in the league that can do it. I mean, Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers are the two best, in my opinion. Wentz is up there for a year 2 quarterback to be showing what Mariota and Winston bring to the table, but with that maturity of Rodgers, where it doesn't get silly. They're not going back to their own end zone for a heroic play. They're not running around the field like a Madden character. His eyes are always down the field. He's not trying to run around and pull off heroics. He just wants to move the chain and make the right decision. And that is so hard to find in a quarterback. And it's easy to see now why the Eagles have made all those risks trading up to try and secure him in the first place.
Talking with Liam Jenkins. Liam, you know, the offensive side of the ball we spent a lot of time on, but the defense really had a very good game. However, there was bad news that we touched on when you first joined us about Ronald Darby. Now, I guess it was good and bad news, right? Because originally it looked bad. It looked like that was it for the year. And now the reports are 4 to 6 weeks. and he thinks that people think he can be back within that 4 to 6 weeks. But it's still a concern because they had only dressed, I believe you said, 2 other cornerbacks for the game, which means they weren't really confident in these other guys that now are going to have to step up and play, the Rasul Douglases of the world, possibly the C.J. Smiths of the world. How long, can the corners continue to play at a solid level without Darby, especially with the test of the speedster Tyreek Hill this week, and you look forward 2 weeks to Odell Beckham and Brandon Marshall?
And even going beyond that, you've then got the Chargers, you've got the Cardinals, potentially the Panthers. There are a lot of receivers in that window that can hurt the Eagles at cornerback. And teams are aware of it, It's not a mask that the Eagles have got a poor secondary. And I think the big thing for me, the swinging factor, is going to be Patrick Robinson. Now, when he came into the Eagles and he signed in the offseason, he started as an outside cornerback. He was meant to be the guy to partner Jalen Mills. That didn't work. That wasn't happening. He was struggling day to day, got to preseason, wasn't much better. Then they moved him inside into the nickel, which is where he had his best season. In San Diego, he allowed a 55% pass completion when he was targeted, posted some of the best numbers for a cornerback in the league that year. If he can hold his own inside the nickel, it gives the Eagles some flexibility. They don't have to move Robinson outside and have a weakness. We saw what Jalen Watkins can do. I've been a big fan of Watkins for a while, and everyone tends to hate on him for some absurd reason, but it's easy to forget that 2 years ago, Jalen Watkins was able to hold his own against Deshaun Jackson, held his own against John Brown. He's a guy that can tackle, that's comfortable in man coverage, and has got that versatility. But for me, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Rasul Douglas, as you mentioned. Third-round pick. He essentially, as a third-round pick, wasn't able to beat out Patrick Robinson or a former seventh-rounder for a starting role. So he's been very much a developmental name, but is he ready to take that jump? Because if he is, that outside tandem is a 7th-round pick last year and a 3rd-round pick this year who couldn't break onto that starting level during game 1. So there's a lot of questions and answers to be had there, but the safeties are going to hold the keys.
Yeah, the other thing is, I said before the season on the show that what I really wanted to see was if Jim Schwartz was going to dial up more blitzes and really go after these quarterbacks almost in a way to protect his secondary, to get pressure on the quarterback quicker, get the quarterbacks off their spot, make them throw errant passes. Well, he did not disappoint me in game 1 because I don't remember a game last year, maybe that Pittsburgh game early, where he was sending guys after the quarterback. And that's the first time in, I guess, the last 6 games the Eagles have played against the Washington Redskins, or at least however long Kirk Cousins has been the quarterback, where he looked uncomfortable against that defense. Just talk about what Schwartz has showed you in terms of adjusting from last year to this year.
It's more, I think, finding a role for the players that were seemingly misfits last year. You look at Michael Kendricks, who balled out in preseason, and the reason why he wasn't used last year is because the team felt so much more comfortable in nickel packages. They needed covered guys, and Kendricks is a blitzer. He's a pass rusher at heart. He was at Cal. He is in Philadelphia, and that was it. He was simply a misfit. So now you've got a sense of confidence in the secondary where last year teams were just throwing underneath. It was curls, it was slants, it was anything within that 10-yard radius. They didn't have time to get to the quarterback, and sending all those guys down will just allow a tight end over the middle or something where corners just are too complacent to make that play. So with a sense of confidence now that the secondary is a lot more secure and it's a lot more shored up, they're able to send more guys down. Liam Jenkins storms down. You've got Kendricks making that thudding play on a 235-pound running back. You've got guys just storming into that box because they're confident outside. And it's a big sign for Schwartz that if he's comfortable with his guys outside, he has no pressure dialing it up and throwing the kitchen sink at the Redskins. And for me, it was huge. You saw the difference it made. I think they blitzed 17% of the time last year, which just wasn't enough for the potential that defense has. But the big potentially monster on the side for me is Tim Jernigan. I mean, how many times did we see him get into the backfield, get to the quarterback? As someone that's a perennial run stopper, he did a hell of a job of making life absolutely intolerable for Kirk Cousins as a passer.
And I tell you what, it, Philadelphia, the fans, we love when the defense is out there hitting. And, man, I just felt like they were flying around to the ball. It's been a while since we've seen that. And it kind of gave you that feel like, this unit's going to be fun to watch all year. Liam, before I let you go, though, I want to just jump ahead real quick They play Kansas City this week. Kansas City coming off a super impressive win in Foxborough. Alex Smith looked as good as he maybe ever has. They looked to have found some studs in Tyreek Hill and Kareem Hunt. What do the Eagles have to do to have any chance, if they do at all, to go into Arrowhead on Sunday afternoon and win?
I think they've got to think outside the box. You've got a head coach they're facing that's 8-3 against his former assistants. Andy Reid is, he's one of the best coaching minds in the league. And to know that relationship with Doug Peterson stems all the way back to before the 1999 season, where Reid was his QB coach in Philadelphia, or his head coach, sorry, as well. Like, this is a long relationship. Like, Reid knows the ins and outs of Peterson as Peterson knows the ins and outs of him. They've got to be creative. And for me, it comes down to the one unit neither of them control. It's all about the defense. And can the Eagles pass rush do enough to thwart out Kareem Hunt's extortionate breakout? And more importantly, tame Tyreek Hill. And the only corner that had a chance of doing that is now injured. There's a lot of pressure on that defense. And for me, this can become a shootout really quickly. And I think for Doug Peterson, he's got to get creative. Whether that includes Pumphrey, like I mentioned earlier, or whether that's simply a case of trying to take more deep shots, get in the backfield into it more openly, and just trying to run the ball down their throat. Because if there's one thing that neither Reid or Peterson does, it's run the ball. If you can attack the other one with a lot of run, drain the clock because both teams are ball hogs, let's just see who can be the smarter coach and outwit the other one. It's just a case of patience. And for me, can the defense get one over on Kansas City, who, of course, are missing a big personality as well?
And that's what I was just going to say. The Eagles might have lost somebody in their secondary, but losing Eric Berry in the defensive secondary for the Chiefs is something the Eagles need to take a chance and exploit. Liam Jenkins, you can follow him at Liam Jenkins 21. You can follow Philly Sports Network at Philadelphia SN on Twitter. Liam, thank you so much for coming back on with us tonight, and love to have you on again later on in the season, man.
Anytime, no worries. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Liam Jenkins on the TSJ Sports Hotline. I want to thank him. Great insight, has a great website. It is growing rapidly. You need to get over there. You need to be reading. He's on top of things. Very good analysis and different analysis, right? Like, everyone is down on Pumphrey. He has a great article up there now saying how he might be the X factor if you were to play him. I don't know if they will. I kind of lean to, like he said, the reports are that they're going to pretty much bench him for most of the season, if not all the season. They kept him from the standpoint that he's a fourth-round pick. And face it, you're going to lose two of your running backs next year, one because the contract's up, the other one because he's going to retire. So you need to keep them in-house, I believe. So let's just kind of dive into this a little bit from my standpoint. I'm not giving Doug Peterson a break. I'm not going to do it. Doug Peterson called a terrible, terrible, terrible game. Terrible game. And he needs to be put on the carpet for it. I told you all off season, I've yelled it from the rooftops that I would not sit back and say, oh, well, maybe next time, maybe this time. No. Enough is enough. Okay? He called a bad game. He was saved by his quarterback making a couple really big plays. This was not a game where you were like, man, oh, there's a good call. One thing I liked about him calling, he did take shots deep. I'm okay with that. But I can't sit here through another coach who's going to pass the ball 40 times and run the ball in the teams. Why are you dressing four running backs if one sees 14 carries, two see 4, and one sees 0? Run the ball 25 times a game and split them between. I still believe you got to give Blunt the bulk of the carries and let him be the volume runner that he is. And I'm telling you, and Liam said it, and I'm in total agreement. If you don't run the ball next week, or at least continue to try to run the ball, even if it's not working, you are screwed before you even take the field. You will be blown out of the building. Blown out of the building. If anybody wants to join in conversation, right now my YouTube chat is not working. I do see that some people have tried to contact me on there. But 516-531-9817. Our next guest will be coming up in about 15 minutes or so. We are going to take a break here just for a couple minutes, get a couple commercials out of the way here. When we come back, we'll continue to talk the Eagles, have to talk about our good old friend, Donnie Mack, who shockingly put himself back in the news with his comments about the Philadelphia Eagles and the fans and this and that and whatever hell else he has to say, because he just can't get over things. But until then, take a couple minutes off. It's about 8:15 here at TSJSports.com. We will be back in a couple minutes. That one, young. Watch me now, watch me now, watch me now, watch me now, watch me now. That one, your name.
Get ready to play. The LG G5 with modular design, the first phone built for fun.
E-Trade is all about seizing opportunity. And I'd like to...
So I'm going to take this opportunity to direct.
Thank you. We'll call you Evening, Film Noir, Smoke, Atmosphere, Bob. You're a young farmhand, and E-Trade is your cow. Milk it.
E-Trade is all about seizing opportunity.
Hey, pass me a kickstart.
Mountain Dew Kickstart. With 2 new flavors, it tastes good.
Welcome back to the Madness, everybody. I am Rob Langi. We're going to continue talking about the Eagles here for a few more minutes. Right after 8:30, Warren Sharp from Sharp Football is going to join us to break down weeks 1 and 2 around the rest of the NFL. I got my stats here. I got to throw a shout-out to my godson, my nephew, Tate, who is very interested in this career field and has done some of the research for me as, I don't have as much time as I used to these days, being a father of twins, being in class. School has started back up, so I am molding the minds of the youth. So a big thank you out to Tate for doing some of that research work for me this week. So we'll be talking about that stuff when we have Warren on here in a little over 10 minutes. But just to kind of wrap up the Eagles talk before I go into our good old buddy number 5 will always love you. You're happy with the win, and you should be. But this idea that we cannot call out the negatives of this team is ridiculous. Like, let's be honest, as good as the defense played, they were helped out by some bad plays in the by receivers dropping passes because they got burned a few times, which is to be expected, especially once Ronald Darby goes out. So let's pump the brakes on the Super Bowl. It's a great win. I'm happy about it. I'm thrilled. They're 1-0 in the division. They won a road division game, something they did not do at all last year. They beat a team who has owned them as of late. But let's call it like it is. And what it is what I said last week. There is an inconsistency there. And that's great that all the players love Doug Peterson. You can see that. And the Gatorade bath, although I thought it was a little much, okay, I get it. You know, something they had talked about all week inside the locker room type of thing. But when those play calls end up biting them later, are they all going to be happy? Because I don't think they are, because we know that a lot of professional athletes have a prima donna side to them. And we know that when you're losing, it's not all fun and games. All right? You can look past it when you win. But those play calls were horrible. The wide receiver screens were horrible. Running out of a shotgun with LeGarrette Blount is horrible. Liam mentioned they don't really have a fullback. That's their fault. And you could blame Howie Roseman for that, but the coach tells you what he needs, and I don't know why they never went out and got a damn fullback. So these are things we're going to have to see them continue to get better at throughout the course of the season. I'll make my picks later on, 6 games. Very tough affair this week. It's going to take a lot for them to go in there and pull, in my opinion, I'll call it a monumental upset. It would be a monumental upset for them to go into Kansas City. I will be there in person. I will be leaving Friday morning to head out there. So, make sure you're following us on Periscope. I'll probably send some videos of Eagles Nation taking over Kansas City, Missouri, eating some good barbecue, probably having a few adult beverages, in the 4 days that I'm there, 3 days that I'm there. So it'll be a good time, and then I'll be back here to talk about it with you next Wednesday. But right now we have to talk about something that took place, I believe it was yesterday, on ESPN's First Take with Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith. They had a special guest host with them, one Donovan McNabb, former Eagles quarterback, who has never really got over the fact that there were people in this town who never came around to him, which I never understood. I hated that. I've been a Donovan McNabb supporter. I've been a Donovan McNabb fan. He's the best quarterback in franchise history. So just listen to this little give and take he has with Stephen A. Smith after Max finishes his point, basically discussing Carson Wentz and what Eagles fans need to do.
They're an imperfect team, as all the NFC East teams are. But I think the Eagles are damn good. Yeah. And I don't have to rethink this NFC East at all. I think they are a problem.
Of course, Ronald Darby.
By the way, according to reports, the Bleacher Report and others, Darby's out 4 to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. So that means that he'll probably be back this season. We shall see. But Donovan, before I'll give you the last word on this because I need an explanation. How is it that you want us to give Nelson Aguilar? How is it that you want us to give him love, right? But you don't particularly care about the love for Wentz, and you don't particularly care about the love for the Eagles, like Max is trying to give them. Can you explain that?
Yes, let me break it down.
Feel free.
I do have love for Carson Wentz. So for all of you out there who think I'm hating on Carson Wentz, pump your brakes a little bit. But did we not see this last year, the first 4 games when they came out 4-0, and everyone jumped on the Pennsylvania bandwagon, and everyone was right until that Detroit game, and then things went wrong? Mm-hmm. Let's just relax. Okay. Let's not let that happen again. I think they're a much better team. They have some veterans who have been very effective. Right. But I need to see them get more involved in the offense.
May I interpret what you're saying for you to the audience? May I try to interpret? What Donovan McNabb is saying is, look, damn it, y'all sat up there and made me wait years before y'all gave me some love. I'll be damned if you gonna just give him some love his second year in the league. Let's pump the brakes and let him earn it. Is that correct?
No, it's not. But I love where you went.
It's totally friggin' correct. And it drives me insane. Because, first of all, Donovan, we didn't wait years as a fan base to give you love. Were there idiots out there who always didn't like you? Yes. And they were dumb. But for the most part, you had the love of I would say, a majority of the fan base for a good amount of time. Secondly, why shouldn't we laud the performance of a second-year guy when he practically wins the game for you from the offensive side of the ball? Carson Wentz won the game on offense. He made play after play where he had to extend it after the offensive line broke down, after his coach refused to run the damn ball, after his coach called some ridiculous plays. Why shouldn't we laud him? Stop getting your feelings. The second reason I'm angry with you is I had to agree with friggin' Stephen A. Smith. But why can't fans be fans? Because they were unfair to you? I have spent so many years defending Donovan McNabb, loving everything about him. Have his jersey in my basement hanging because he was one of my favorite Eagles. But, man, just let me use your, years ago, keep my name out your mouth. Remember that, Dom? Said it about T.O. Agreed with you then. Defended you then. I did. Keep the Eagles out your mouth because you can't say anything positive. You can't say anything positive. You said it when he was drafted. You took shots at Carson Wentz. The kid can play the game, and we're allowed to be excited about it. If you've listened to the fan base, no one thinks his team is a Super Bowl team now. That's not what we're saying. But when he makes unbelievable plays and has this intangible skill set where he can get himself out of bad situations when the pocket breaks down, yeah, we're going to get excited. You want to know why we get excited? Because for the first time since we see someone that can make a play on their own. And it excites us because you were the last time we had a great quarterback in this town. So take it more as a compliment. And I know he was baited by Stephen A. Smith, but he obviously had made a comment prior to that for Stephen A. Smith to ask him that question. I just can't take it. I want to like him, and he makes it so hard. He makes it so hard. And that whole, no, that's not what I meant. Yes,
second half here. I mean, Bill O'Brien, horrific decision in my opinion, terrible move there. But overall, I mean, look, the reason why Jacksonville looks so good here is because they were able to run the ball so much. They had the lead, and they were able to rely on Leonard Fournette and just ground and pound as much as possible. And then on the early downs, the few plays when Blake Bortles did throw the ball, which I believe he completed 6 passes on early downs in the first half, 3 of those were to Leonard Fournette. So they just basically used Leonard Fournette as much as humanly possible to basically avoid third downs, keep the clock running, and just take it to them, knowing that their defense was going to be able to handle the rest of it.
Talking with Donovan, Warren Sharp. Warren, one of the big games of the day was the Fox, game of the day was Seattle traveling to Green Bay. A lot of people look at these two teams and say possibly the 2 top teams in the NFC. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons are in the mix as well. The defenses both played really well, and I'm not surprised to see that necessarily from the Seattle defense to a certain extent, or at least played well for most of the game. But that Green Bay defense seemed to be flying around, but I'm not sure if that was more so them, or is this offensive line issue in Seattle that they just didn't fix that bad right now?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think the offensive line is pretty bad, and the Packers playing at home, were able to use that to their benefit. The other element here was the fact that the Packers really controlled the time of possession in this game. I mean, Aaron Rodgers had 42 attempts. Russell Wilson had about half of that. They had the ball for almost 40 minutes, did the Packers. So Seattle's defense was getting completely gassed in this game, and Seattle's offense really wasn't even having the opportunity to get into rhythm. They were having so many 3-and-outs. I mean, they had 12 first downs the entire game. They went to third down 12 times, whereas the Packers had over double the number of first downs. So it definitely is a situation where their offensive line needs a lot of work, but the way that the Packers were applying that pressure, I'm just not a big Darrell Bevell fan, the offensive coordinator for Seattle. They had opportunities down there in the red zone. They got down there twice. They couldn't capitalize on it. This game really should have been, as lopsided as it looked, this was a 1-score game at the end of the day, and they took away a touchdown off the board that should have been there for Seattle. So I actually think that if this game, though it looked like one way on the TV, if this game were being played at a neutral site, I think Seattle wins that game. I think that if you don't take away that touchdown off the board and it's at a neutral site, Seattle wins this game. I think Seattle was the better team thanks to their defense, their defensive effort. Being out there for 40 minutes and holding the Packers at home to only 17 points was tremendous. It's just Seattle's offense, especially with the blocking and the schemes that Darrell Bevell is using to try to get that pass protection, is just not there. He's not being creative enough, in my opinion.
Talk with Warren Sharp. And Warren, before we move on to breaking down some Week 2 matchups, here in Philadelphia, one of the games that had all of our attention was the Sunday night game between the Giants and the Cowboys. I'm on record, of course, of saying that the Giants would supplant the Cowboys as the NFC East Division champions this year. I just thought that defense was going to be very, very, very good, and they still might be. But that did not look like the New York Giants team I expected to see. I don't think that Dallas did anything super special in the game, but let's just talk about the Giants for a minute. Is, once again, almost the same question as Seattle. Is the offensive line concerns going to be too much for this offense to overcome?
Against decent teams, yes. In fact, I fully believe that it is. Look, you can't underestimate for a team like the Giants the loss of Odell Beckham, because he's the player who made so many big plays for that team last year, and they don't really have anybody even close to him. They don't have a run game they can rely on. They don't have the offensive line protection so that they can take longer dropbacks so that Eli can scan the field and try to get the ball to the other players. They have to get it out quick, and that's what Odell was doing last year. So many slants, quick passes that he would then take 50, 60, 70 yards to the house. So it is going to be a problem, number one, when he's not there. But even when he is there at full strength, I actually thought that if Ezekiel Elliott was suspended from the Cowboys, that the Eagles could have been a dark horse at plus 300 to win the NFC East. I didn't think it was likely that they win the East, but I thought there was a good chance that they could, because I'm just not sold on the Giants offensively. And the other problem for the Giants, and we saw this, they were basically at full strength in the playoffs, but they still lost to Aaron Rodgers with a defense that was completely injured last year and an offense that had some problems at the time as well. In this league, the way that the rules are, good offense will beat good defense most of the time. And you have to have better offense than what the Giants have right now, in my opinion, to take it to the next level, to go further into the postseason. So I do think it's a problem. Unless they somehow rectify it, which would be difficult, I think they're going to struggle.
Well, we'll talk with Warren Sharp. And Warren, one of the teams in week one that seemed to be clicking on offense a little bit better than I would have expected, just because I watched Sam Bradford for a year here, was the Minnesota Vikings. And they travel for a really interesting matchup to Pittsburgh in week two. You know, Pittsburgh did not play well in week one. They did get out of there with a W. It wasn't the prettiest of wins for them. But now they come home. You know, do you expect to see a different Pittsburgh team here in week two and expect them to give a lot more trouble, because the defense did play well, to Minnesota than, say, New Orleans did last week?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's a big advantage playing in that dome up in Minnesota. First and foremost, that's a huge home field advantage. Secondly, the Steelers always struggle on the road. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, it's hard to really explain. He's a big guy, why he struggles as much as he does on the road, but he does. And then you take into consideration the fact that, look, they didn't get anything out of the run game, like absolutely nothing. Le'Veon Bell was successful on just 2 out of 10 rushes. And I like to use success rate more so than yards per carry, because success rate takes into consideration, are you in 3rd and long and just running the ball just so that you can punt it? You gain 6 yards, but it was 3rd and 10 and you punt it anyways. Just because you're averaging 6 yards per carry on runs like that does not mean that that's a good thing. So I look at success rate, but even if you just look at yards per carry, he only averaged 3.2 yards per carry. I think the holdout definitely impacted him. There was very little rhythm. You know, Martavis Bryant really was not that guy who was helping out. He only caught 2 passes, 2.3 yards per attempt is what Ben was averaging when he threw the ball to Martavis. So we were talking about, I don't know, nationally there was a lot of hype. You know, I think this was like just the 9th game that all of these quote-unquote killer bees worked together with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant and Ben Roethlisberger. And Martavis and Le'Veon did absolutely nothing. It was basically a weak version of Ben throwing the ball 11 times, 11 completions to Antonio Brown. That's what the Steelers brought to the table in addition to defense. And 7 sacks against the decent offensive line that Cleveland now has on the road was impressive, although, of course, I thought Deshaun Kaiser held the ball a little bit too long, which aided in some of those sacks. I think this game against Minnesota is going to be very intriguing. I do think Minnesota's defense can travel on the road. I don't mean to say that they would be able to shut down Antonio Brown at home, but it's really going to be about who can establish that line of scrimmage in this game. I think this game has the potential to be one of those old school games where a lot of it is decided at the line of scrimmage and who's able to control that line. Both teams like to have balance. They like to be able to run the ball. They have good receivers and they have quarterbacks they have a lot of confidence in. I think both of these teams, I expect the Steelers to win the AFC North, and I predicted that the Vikings would win over 8.5 games this year and likely take a wild card spot. So I think both these teams are potential playoff teams. I think this is going to be a really great matchup amongst a handful of really great matchups this week.
What are some of the other games, maybe one or two of the other games that you look at and you're really looking forward to see, and what about those games intrigue you?
Well, Atlanta, Green Bay, primarily from the rematch angle, the revenge angle. Both of these teams can play a great style, but I'm really excited to see first of all, Atlanta's opening their stadium. So that's going to provide a big burst to this team. Mm-hmm. But unlike last year when they met late in the season in the playoffs and they had injuries on both their defenses, these teams are healthy, including offensively. If you remember the way that game was going down the stretch, Green Bay was just beat up. And both these teams are healthy, and I'm really excited to see them go at it. But I want to see what Steve Sarkisian does offensively with the Falcons. We know that how great they were last season under Kyle Shanahan offensively. They went up to Chicago, and I figured that they would actually be tested, and they were. Chicago covered that 7-point spread. But now they're coming back home. They're perhaps looking ahead to this game. Should be fascinating to see that matchup, in my opinion.
We are in Philadelphia, so I'd be remiss not to ask you a question or two about the Philadelphia-Kansas City game. You look at the statistics of Andy Reid versus former assistants. You look at how well the Chiefs play in Arrowhead. You look at Andy Reid with an extended bye or with extended time off as he did because he played last Thursday. Is there any – obviously there's a chance, but what has to happen for the Eagles to be able to pull what I would consider personally almost a monumental upset to go in there and win this game on Sunday?
I agree. It would be, not only is it an upset, on the point spread, but I do think situationally with them having longer time to prepare. And look, the other thing is there aren't many teams in the NFL who have had to go on the road back-to-back weeks to start the season. So this is a big detriment for the Eagles in this spot to have to go to D.C. and then to Kansas City, one of the toughest places to play. They boast the loudest crowd, and I think they're obviously going to be juiced up after winning up in New England last week in a game that was a monumental upset for them to win that game. So that crowd's going to be revved up for this game. And as you guys, I'm sure, know better than even I do, Carson Wentz really struggled on the road last year. So I was very impressed to see what he was able to do in week one. I like the way that they attack at multiple levels. I think both of these teams are really refreshing to me to an extent because so many teams in the NFL nowadays, they line up in 11 personnel and they just go. And they stick their 3 wide receivers out there and they try to target their receivers. And it's very inefficient given the way that matchups are created and edges are created in the NFL by throwing the ball to running backs and tight ends. And I think both of these teams excel at employing formationally edges to beat their opposition. You talk about both these teams have great tight ends that they throw the ball to often. Both these teams have running backs that can come out of the backfield. They throw the ball to them as well. Obviously in Kansas City, it's a rookie, but they're still getting him the ball in space through the passing game. Andy Reid's great, as you know, at taking smaller plays closer to the line of scrimmage and dialing up big gains out of them just through the schemes that he utilizes. I think it is going to be a challenge, but I do really respect both of these defenses. So that's why it's going to be a really interesting chess match between the two teams. Look, I think Philadelphia, you guys have one of the best front sevens in the NFL, but the injury in your secondary to Darby really is going to hurt because that was a weakness, and then teams are obviously going to attack that now that he's out. I really am interested to see if I was Andy Reid and I saw what Alex Smith did last week, I'm going to build on that momentum because, in my opinion, there is no way for Kansas City to play Kansas City-style football that we've seen in Andy Reid's 4 years there and win games in the playoffs against good offenses. They were just too much of a clamped-up offense, and the way that they started expanding things and working the ball deeper down the field through the air and being more aggressive, that's exactly what they need. After seeing that in week one, I think it would be a big mistake for them to put the clamps on it and just hand the ball off a lot to Hunt this week. I think they need to continue that aerial assault, which would play into your weakness. And so I expect Alex Smith to keep forcing the ball down the field and a lot of creativity. On the flip side, they obviously just lost one of their key safeties, and so I think you guys need to continue your aggressive style. The trick is going to be protection with the offensive line and Wentz on the road with the snap counts so that opposing defensive line is not getting too much pressure on Wentz, because I do think they want to be creative. They might struggle to run the ball. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of LeGarrette Blount with your style of team, but I think you've got other receivers, smaller types of running backs that are going to be able to be utilized more in a pass game. So I do expect a pretty high pass rate from you guys going in there, and I think you could see success if Wentz has some time.
Well, I'll sit back and hope that Andy Reid puts the clamps on the offense so the Eagles can get the upset. But Warren Sharp, I got to tell you, that was some of the best analysis we've had on this show. Thank you so much for coming on. You could go see Warren at Sharp Football on Twitter, sharpfootballanalysis.com, sharpfootballstats.com. Warren, please come on again with us. This was a great interview, man. Really enjoyed it.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you very much. That's Warren Sharp from Sharp Football. Really good stuff there to kind of break down the league and, kind of get us ready for me to make my picks here in the final 5 minutes of the show. Once again, want to thank TSJSports.com. I'm going to get all this out of the way right now. Want to thank my godson, my nephew, Tate. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm looking at these stats and unbelievably impressed. I could put it out there. He's a young guy, 11 years old, and the way he broke down these games was incredible. So I want to thank him for that as well. But it's time to get to these, my picks that are never wrong, except for the fact that they're always wrong. I can't even see what I think I went 3-3 last week. I got to check. I will get the official scores for you. I will go back. I know I lost the Patriots game, but I won the Eagles. I'm pretty sure I picked Minnesota to win, so I won that game. I lost the Giants, so that was 2-2. I think I said Green Bay would win, so I was 3-2. And trying to think, I think I picked Tennessee to win the Tennessee Oakland game, so I think it was 3-3 at the end. But to get to my picks here in the final 4.5 minutes, we'll go through them pretty quickly here. One of the games I'm going to is tomorrow night's contest. Houston travels to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a 6-point favorite in the game. I look at this game very simply. You got two teams that did not show up in week one. They played terrible, terrible football. The difference is Houston now has to travel to Cincinnati, and frankly, Cincinnati's a better team. This is probably going to be Deshaun Watson's first start. Cincinnati's defense is really going to put the pressure on this kid. I think Cincinnati's better than what they showed. I don't think they're great by any means, but I think they're better than what they showed against Baltimore last Sunday. So I see Cincinnati winning this game. I see them covering the 6 points. So I will take Cincy giving 6 in the Thursday night game. Let's move ahead to Sunday. Talked about a little bit with Warren, the Minnesota-Pittsburgh game. Listen, I think Minnesota's a good team. I truly, truly do. I don't think they're as good as they showed in that dome, and I think they're going to be a team that when they're in the dome, when they're at home, tough to beat. Get them outside, different story. Pittsburgh struggled as 3-point by Warren. They always seem to struggle on the road, even when they win. They are such a better team at home. They're a 6-point favorite, so pay attention. I have Pittsburgh winning the game, but I have Minnesota covering. I see like a 24-20 or something like that. So Minnesota covers the spread, but they don't win. Pittsburgh does win the game. Move down to Dallas going to Denver. Denver's a 2-point underdog at home to Dallas. Look, Denver's a tough place to play. And they're not the same Denver Broncos that they've been in the past. The offense is not great, but the offense is good enough against a defense that I don't think is that good in Dallas. I think Dak has some problems out there in Denver. I picked Denver to win this game outright. Outright. Denver's going to win this game outright. Dallas is going to go to 1-1 on the season. Go to the Sunday night game, Green Bay at Atlanta. Atlanta 3-point favorites in the game, opening a new stadium. It is a rematch, so Green Bay's going to have a little revenge on their mind, but I just don't see them winning this game. I think Atlanta wants to set the tone at home. I think they want people to understand that when you come into their new stadium, it's going to be very difficult to win. It's also going to be very difficult for fans not to drink, because I believe this is the stadium where beers are like $3, which is incredible. When you talk about beers in a stadium, I almost want to go to an Atlanta game just so I can drink a beer for under $7.50 at an NFL game. That would be enough for me. I'm taking Atlanta to win this game and cover, have them winning probably by about 7. Monday night game, Detroit travels to the New York Giants, who are 3.5-point favorites. Listen, I was very impressed with Detroit, although I know they were home. I was very unimpressed with New York, although I know they were on the road. But Warren said that offensive line is bad, and this Detroit front, I think, is going to get pressure on Eli. I have Detroit going into New York and winning the game outright, and my division champion starting 0-2. Still sticking with it. I still think they'll get it right by the end of the year. Going to the Philadelphia Eagles, traveling to Kansas City with me. We'll all be traveling out there. Now, I'll tell you that most of the time I go to these games, they lose. I think I'm like 2-15. But I'm still going to go because it's a hell of a weekend. It's a lot of fun. But I think it's going to be the same result and not have anything to do with me being there. I just think Kansas City's that much better than them. I think Kansas City routs them. It's a 5.5-point line. I think Kansas City wins by 10 to 13 points. There it is. There's my 6 picks. Final 50 seconds of the show. I want to thank my guests, Liam Jenkins and Warren Sharp, for joining me. I want to thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week to hear about all of my travels throughout Kansas City. And until then, embrace the madness. I never thought I'd